Hey folks, welcome to this video series we're doing looking at individual states and provinces across the continent of North America, and we're evaluating the good, the bad, and the ugly of that state. And if you like the kind of content that we're doing here, feel free to check out the Homestead Accelerator and the program we run where we list properties like this every single week. We list 10 to 30 properties a week. And these are properties that would make good homesteads. So what we're going to do in today's video is we're going to look at the state of Ohio, and we're going to zoom right in, and we are going to evaluate the places that would be good areas to be in and the places that are not so good to be in. Now, one thing I'll say about Ohio in general is that it's a very populated state. If you look at it on a population density map, you'll see that there's a lot going on. There's a lot of interstate highways zigzagging through, state highways, the metropolitan areas of Cincinnati, Dayton, Columbus, Cleveland, and all these other zones around Cleveland are massively populated. The one challenge I find with the state in general is that it has a majority of geography in what I call peri-urban, and basically from peri-urban to suburban to urban. That's pretty much this whole chunk here of the state. So let's just get a bit more perspective there. Without the roads, you can kind of see it better. But if I can just take this polygon tool here for a second and just kind of show you the general areas that I don't think are that great in Ohio, is basically this. And what I'm doing is I'm following the edge of the darkness of green, essentially, which represents the rural areas. So for the most part, I would disregard that entire part of the state. However, the closer you get to a place like Michigan, up here, in this greener zone, even coming into the north part of Indiana, is better of those areas. And even in here still, there are pockets. What I look for in homestead real estate is rural areas. And the main reason for that is there's a direct correlation to the amount of concrete as to the varying degrees of your freedom. And where there's more concrete, there's less freedom. And where there's less concrete, there's more freedom. And just case in point right here. Look at this area here of Columbus. Let's kill these roads because they're kind of annoying. Move this thing out of the way. And check it out. So we've got Columbus. Concrete everywhere. Government infrastructure, highways, buildings, employees, energy. So much infrastructure is required to take care of all the people in this area. And there's a saying that I have. It's that where the money flows, the policy goes. So this is an area of economic activity. Where the money goes, the policy flows. So where there's more money being spent, there's more government. And it's really that simple. And so you can disregard the specific politics of the region as far as its federal or state level policies, things like that, the way it votes in the federal election. Forget all that. I'm talking about municipal government infrastructure. And that is the government, that is the sector of the government that actually has the most effect on your life, because it affects how you can physically exist. Whereas, say, federal or even state, when you're talking about taxation and things like that, those things are flexible because you can play your taxes one way or the other. But it's somewhat ethereal in the way that you live. Whereas when you're in the physical space and the way you operate there is restricted or monitored or surveilled, however you want to look at it, it decreases the amount of freedom you have. So that's the fundamental there. So having said that, let me just turn on some other layers of this map and kind of show you where we want to completely avoid. And that is somewhat reflected in the area that I just drew, right? Is that the big parts of the state as far as population are here. And these are 100-mile radiuses where I'm not necessarily saying always be 100 miles out, but just as a general principle, we'll assume that, and then we might look for anomalies. And you could do that if you zoomed into the Cincinnati area here, and you can see that this rural area here, this is topographical. That's why it has these water tributaries and such, and there's more topography here, meaning that it's harder to access in terms of road infrastructure than it is into the sort of peri-urban flats of these areas northeast of Cincinnati. So yes, we might find decent properties in this region here. So I'm not necessarily saying always stay 100 miles out of that region, but for the most part, I would. This part, I would completely Fort Wayne, forget about it, because all it is urban, suburban, and peri-urban blocks. Boom, look at these. These are probably quarter sections of land. That's typically how things were first plotted out in North America. It's the same in Canada. These blocks here probably represent 160 acres, maybe. Actually, let me. Maybe if I don't, maybe I'll put my foot in my mouth, but let's just see for a second. Because this is how it is in Alberta. We see this all the time. No, I'm wrong. It's a subsection of that. So it's like 600 and something acres. Either way, that's how these peri-urban areas are completely blocked out. So just imagine government bureaucrats. Is it easier for them to drive on these roads, or is it harder to drive on these roads? It really is that simple. Again, where the money flows, the policy goes. So we get into these areas, now we're talking, right? But you could be, not too far out of Columbus, coming up into these foothills and have access to the amenities and services that region might provide for you. But with the less exposure to, call it your average Walmart shopper. Basically, the normie constituency of the United States and Canada. You can get some nice spots up here, perhaps. So let's just put up on another filter good areas that we can focus on and see. These are all the areas that I basically said get out of. So what we're really talking about in Ohio in general are these rural areas. Coming down into Cambridge here, we've got lots of forests. We've got forestry going on, so you got forestry service roads up into these back hills, which is good, which is an advantage. It's access to nature. But we've got a city that's like a medium-sized city that you can probably have most of the amenities you need. You will find in this Spring Valley region, going up into probably not as far as Northgate, but even coming along here, this Eastern Valley, going towards Norwich. And out of our region towards the Zanesville area and all of that, coming over towards Columbus. This is a major thoroughfare, but it'll be good for your access if you were to move into any of these little towns in these regions. And it's nice in here. You get some rolling hills, not steep mountains, but we get some nice topography. And so, you might think about a homestead, something like this. Hey, what's going on here? Let's just imagine let's just draw it out. Let's just say this is a big, it could be 82-acre section of land. Let's take a look at what's going on there. Hey, there's some nice features here I like. So we've got, are we at the end of it? Yeah, we're at a dead end road. Or wait a second, this could be the road too, actually. Or it could be an easement into the property. Let's assume it's an easement into the property just for the sake of doing this. And let's also assume that this property's got a house down here, which is maybe where they live, and then they're building something else up here. But this has got some great features. This is a great access. It's clean and easy, but it's also private. It is also, whoever's coming up the road isn't going to see what's going on here. They're going to see this. But even this is at the end of that road. And I'm just kind of playing a hypothetical game here. I don't know the exact details of this. It doesn't matter. Let's just pretend it's one thing and then look at it that way. This is still quite private because it's the end of a dirt road, and I can tell it's a dirt road because of that little bit in the middle. So the parts from the wheel tracks packed down on the dirt road more. So it's a dirt road, but it looks like it's a well-maintained dirt road. It's probably gravel crushed. But we got a pond in here, which I like. We've got lots of trees, good access. in this part of the property, we've got some field access. We're also got access to a riparian area coming down, water tributary that's going to be melting downhill from the snow melt, which is great. And we've got a pond right in the center. This is a big watershed. Now, they put the pond in the perfect place because all this sheds towards this center area, and then it goes through this draw here. And so they put the pond in the perfect place. That's lovely. The only drawback to a property like this in specific is that there's not as many fields for agriculture, but maybe there is. Because actually, let's see. This was 82 acres. This could be a field down here by the river. Hey, there you go. There's an acre. Not a ton, but that's something. We would assume that the property line would probably follow right along the river here. So most likely this field belongs to this one particular property. But we got another, we can kind of just draw it all out here actually. We got 2 acres there, easy, getting into this too a bit more. 2.5, you could easily develop 5 acres in all of this by just knocking down some of those trees. So that's fine. So that's good. I mean, this is exactly what I like to see in an ideal property. Is I like to see all you need is 5 acres to do your main infrastructure, your fields, pastures for small animals, or not small animals, cows and things, but small amounts of animals. You can have all the core infrastructure of a homestead there, and then you can have forests. Having said that, if you wanted to make the homestead up here, you could. But with a little bit more effort. You can see that you could log all this in here, starting the pond, and actually it would be kind of cool because then stuff would melt into this pond faster, so you'd benefit from it in some ways. But you could easily expand your access in here. I'll kind of just draw it out, what you would do here, and it would be totally of benefit to you in the way that this would now shed water and make it available to you. Because when water sheds through forests, it's a good thing. And the forest floor, the humus layer, the roots, the mycelium, all those things in the forest floor hold that water. And that's a good thing. But it's not necessarily a bad thing if you wanted to log that and have, boom, 5.6 acres here. Easy. This is great. A whole other homestead could exist in the same spot. And it'd be really cool because you'd have this open area that's a bit of a dish that actually has great aspect too, because this chunk of it here has eastern aspect, a little bit south. That's the best. And, we're not in high mountain regions here in Ohio like we are in British Columbia or Washington or parts of Montana, even parts tucked up near the Adirondack Mountains in the Vermont area and stuff like that. This is shallower mountains. We're coming out of sort of low-lying prairie that comes uphill a little bit into some more mountainous regions. So the topography here is only of benefit. It's going to make sure it's less windy here. You'll have lower average wind speeds. You'll have less risk for any other type of windy anomalies and such. This is all going to be protection to you. But so that, that's right there. That's a fantastic parcel of land. And we could find much of the same in any of these other areas. See these tributaries coming down? These are valleys. This is the main drainage coming probably towards the Great Lake. I'm assuming here. Let's see. 338 going down. Yeah, we go down towards Cleveland. So this main drainage drowns towards the Great Lake, still in this region, probably until you cross this valley here. And then everything drains to there, and then that goes in its own direction. Roads and highways often follow river valleys and riparian zones. As we call it, riparian zone mean an area of wooded flora that follows a water area down a hill. That's a riparian area. But they don't always develop riparian areas. Sometimes they want to preserve riparian areas. But anyways, we can come into these types here and we can find much of the same things. Like you could say, hey, here's a homestead right down here. What's going on here? Oh, that looks like a little RV park. That's kind of a neat little spot. But you can find lots of good stuff, in these plot of land like this, bit of field, some forest. I like to see, if I'm talking 80 acres, call it 40 to 80 acres, I want to see ideally 90% of the total landmass there be treed, and then that other 10% gives you at least that 5 acres that you need to have all your homestead infrastructure, your fields, your pastures, area for a small market garden, greenhouses, road infrastructure, you name it. You can really do it all in 5 acres. So I like to see it laid out that way. But if we're talking 10 acres, then of course you're not going to have 90% of that in forests. However, you might be backed up to state or provincial land or federal land that gets you that wildness and access to it. You can go walking around it. You can go looking for mushrooms. You can, build a little cabin here. I'm not telling you to do that, but you could, things like that. You can still get the benefit of it. So when you get into those smaller acreages, you can kind of think about it that way. But I think the more you look around Ohio here, you're going to find much of that. And, but yeah, this would be the place that I'd want to be if I was in Ohio. Of course, the challenge here is that there's less stuff, right? There's higher density here. There's more volume in inventory and real estate. Out here, it's going to be less so. But this is where I'd be looking if I was considering the state of Ohio. Hope you guys found that video helpful. If you did, go check out freedomfarmers.com. Check out the links we've got in this video that takes you to the Homestead Accelerator and shows you a whole course I've built called Finding the Perfect Homestead Property, which teaches you these skills that I'm using, looking at Google Earth, how I'm reading the landscape. And also we provide you with listings every single week of interest in many of the states in Canada and the US. All right, guys, hope you found that video helpful. If you did, smash the link. I'll see you in the next one.